This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Today's episode, I'm going to cover contractors and what kind of forms you need, if any, what kind of paperwork you need for contractors. This is going to be distinct from episode 96, where I cover what makes someone an independent contractor versus an employee. This is really going to be about contractor forms, and you can go all over the spectrum here. You know, as simple as, you know, some people say, "Hey, John Smith, thanks for walking up here, quasi-homeless. Here's $10, clean out that house." Okay, that's obviously on the very schmo end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, the pro would be, you know, the union plumber who's got the truck and the hat and the business card and the laptop with their name on it, and they're a pro, right? And they charge you service fees, they got their own equipment, they got their own tools, they got crews, they have a website. Obviously the pro is going to cost more, and practically it's hard to get pros a lot of times unless you've got a lot of business with them, where the schmoes often live in the park and they're available. You know, I've got some schmoes that I really appreciate, right? That I call them a schmo, but it sounds disingenuous, but I appreciate him. But I'll call them or text them sometimes at 10 o'clock at night on Friday night and say, "Hey, sewer clog, can you get there in the morning?" And he's like, I've been drinking. No, not that much. I'll be right over there. And I'm like, good grief. You know, like, okay, it's a sewer clog. Is he going to blow something up? No. How much has he been drinking? Okay, thanks for getting it unclogged at 10:15 at night. So that's great. I had this one contractor, Roberto, who was just awesome, and I had a single-family house. This is on the 4th of July weekend. And I'm sitting here, I was in law school at the time, and I'm sitting up. It's like 11:15, 11:30 at night. I'm sitting at my dining room table, practicing law, and wouldn't you know it, the storm comes, and a tree, you know, I don't know if it got hit by lightning or just winds, I don't remember, but a huge tree fell down, took out the power line, knocked the power off the house, and the house had no power. The tree hit the roof, and the dormer broke the roof. It's leaking. The live wire is on the ground. Took the electric riser and all that stuff off the house. And I called Roberto. And it's like, "Hey, man, it's late." And he answered. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Oh, tired, long day. Sit down, cerveza, go sleep." I said, "Okay." I said, "Hey, I got this roof leak. You know, could you get over there and tarp it before it gets wet? If not tonight, I get it tonight. Can you do it in the first thing in the morning, you know, to preserve any potential damages and mitigate damages?" And he said, "Give me 10 minutes. And he was over there, and he lived right down the street. He was over there in 10 minutes and made this, you know, big problem a smaller problem. It ended up becoming a big problem because the city permit department was closed, electric department was closed. My entire insurance branch was family oriented and a family business, and they took the lake weekend around the 4th of July. So I had 4 or 5, 6 days with nobody around, no power, you know, roof was not secure, all this kind of stuff, and the electric riser and then the can meter on the home had to be upgraded, and that meant because of the ampage of this old 1910 house, I had to replace some knob and tube or old school wiring, so it cost me like $5,000, and the insurance company didn't pay for upgrades. They didn't pay to take the tree away because the tree hit the house, rolled off the house, so it didn't need to be removed from the house. So that really sucked. But Roberto saved the day. So I'm getting on a tangent, but he'd be a quasi-schmo under the normal definition, but he's a pro in my heart. Okay, so what are the rules here on documents? Do you need to have a vendor, a contractor, have workers' comp and general liability insurance? The preferred answer is yes, of course. Practically, the guy that is going to trash out a house for $100, or the guy that's going to put in skirting, if you do it in-house, which is much cheaper, or just the guy that's going to pick up trash in the park, pick up loose limbs, pick up the dirty mattresses, throw them in the dumpster, that guy's not going to have general liability insurance and workers' comp insurance, okay? So what do? As a lawyer, I probably shouldn't admit this, that I sometimes don't make them have all of the proper insurance, but here's what I do. I have them sign a general contractor, independent contractor waiver, and it's got all kinds of legalese in there. They waive everything to the fullest extent of the law, and I get W-9, so I can, 1099 them legitimately at the end of the year, because you don't want to cheat on your taxes. That's a bad deal. So the waiver, that helps. Is the waiver going to hold up? The answer is it depends. It could not. The guy slips and breaks his ankle, he's probably not going to sue you for $1 million. And he's going to be like, dang, I signed a waiver. He's going to take it to a junior varsity attorney who is obviously going to be contingent fee because he can't afford to hire somebody for $200, $300, $400 an hour. And the junior varsity attorney's going to say, it's an ankle. You're screwed. You signed a waiver. Okay. Now, if the guy falls off a tree and breaks his neck, him or his kin is going to sue you for millions of dollars. Is the waiver going to hold up? Probably not, because you pretty much made him sign it under duress. You said, if you want the money, if you want the work, you must sign. That's a gray area. Case law and this kind of stuff is very fact specific. I wouldn't hang my hat on it. So you should never hire a schmo just on a waiver for anything, quote, dangerous. They can't be painting roofs. They could paint like the baseboard trim of a house. They can even paint the body of the house, but they can't paint the roof. None of this is legal advice, by the way. They certainly can't be running concrete machines, augers and stuff drilling into the ground to pour concrete. They cannot certainly be transporting mobile homes and or installing mobile homes without the installer license or DOT license, CDL, all that kind of stuff. I don't let them trim trees. Trimming trees by its nature is dangerous. So I only allow pros to trim trees. You must have GL and work comp. Little stuff like, interior remodel, I use a lot of schmoes for that. And I make them sign the waiver. Is that good enough? No. And a lot of people have the waiver or the pro. The pro's expensive, the waiver is risky. Here's the belt and suspenders middle ground. I pay work comp and GL on my schmoes. They're, quote, 1099 independent contractors. But I still pay work comp and GL on them. It adds about 2% to their wage, but it's worth it to me because it's that extra level security. When you get work comp or GL, you get a quote or a bid from an insurance company, and they're going to ask you who's going to work there. So when I first got GL, I had 4 team members. I was one of them. I couldn't get work comp GL myself because you can't file a claim for your own injuries. So I had 3 employees, 2 property managers, and an admin bookkeeping type assistant. Well, admin assistant is low risk job classification, so the risk code is very low. Wage was also quasi low, but let's say my admin made $30,000 and my property manager made $30,000. Property management is a more dangerous profession, so compared to admin. So the $30,000 and the $30,000, the rate was one factor. The second factor was the job class. I then decided, I got a 1099 guy who pretty much works full-time for me. He's allowed to moonlight, but let's be honest, I was working him like 45, 50 hours a week, and he didn't really have a lot of side jobs. So was he an employee or a 1099? We paid him as a 1099, but he kind of took a lot of the direction from us, and go listen to episode 96 and we'll cover more of this, but he was probably going to be classified as an employee. So I covered him under GL and work comp. Now, his job duty was more dangerous. It was, quote, maintenance. There's a difference between maintenance repair and general contractor construction. So he wasn't doing general contractor construction. He was doing maintenance. Did he do or is he allowed to occasionally, get on a ladder to paint, install a light bulb? Yes. Is he allowed to occasionally drive a loader to put a gravel driveway in? My insurance agent said yes. But I paid work comp GL on him. Now, I didn't tell him that I had work comp on him, because if he rolled his ankle, I didn't want him to sue me and be on work comp. So I paid him like a 1099, which he liked because I didn't take taxes out of his paycheck. But he might have been classified as an employee, and he certainly had work comp covered on him. Once a year, they do a work comp audit. They readjust your premium based on how much you paid to 1099s and employees. And if the 1099s are pros, you got to get their own GL and work comp policy, often called a COI, Certificate of Insurance, or an ACORD form. That's important, because if you don't have it, then the insurance company doesn't think it counts. So, like, one year I spent like $200,000 on a concrete guy, and we somehow lost his form. So, like, I know he has insurance. Like, he's like super pro. He's like the best vendor I've ever hired, actually. But we paid him a huge number because we put so many homes in. And we had to reach out to him. Hey, give me a copy of your ACORD form, your COI from this time period. And he did. Okay, cool. Well, then I didn't get stuck with the premium audit. But having the work comp up front is huge. So the first example, I had 4 employees, but myself being one of them. And then I had a 5th guy who was a 1099, who was maintenance. We added some maintenance to the project, to the policy. We said, like, oh, I'll probably have like $20,000 this year. Well, it turns out we paid like $50,000 that year. All it meant was we had to pay more premium in arrears. We didn't have to be uncovered or uninsured, so that was important. So have them sign a waiver. In general, other things to keep in mind when you're hiring any vendor, when they're done with the job, depending on the job, you should get a lien waiver. That's like best practices. When I was doing commercial real estate, we did lien waivers on retail projects. Here, frankly, Joe Schmos is going to sign anything you put in front of him, but practically I don't get a lien waiver for every time the guy trashes out a home or mows the grass or something like that. Also, just when you have a job, do you want to have a written contract? I mean, as a lawyer, I should say, yes, written contract. But realistically, I don't have a lot of written contracts. If I got a bid job, yeah, I got a bid. Here's the scope of work. Who's paying for materials? Is this labor only or labor and materials? What's the time to start, the time to finish? What's the form of payment, the frequency of payment? Is there a draw? Is there any retainage? What's the status on who's paying for a dumpster and how frequently is the dumpster going to be around? What about daily cleanup? The key here is a written scope. Like when I had somebody remodel my basement, the first time I had somebody remodel my basement, I added a kids' playroom and a bar. And I had a pro do it, right? I had a written contract. This is all clarified. Breach provisions, damage provisions, all that kind of stuff. But then I ended up hiring, buying some mobile home parks later in life, and I have a bunch of schmoes on the payroll now, or the 1099 payroll. One of them is named Hector. Hector's super talented, so when I decided to add another bathroom in the basement and an exercise room, well, I don't really feel like paying pro prices. I had Hector on the payroll at $20 an hour, which was really good for a guy that can do, stud out a room, electric, HVAC, put in a window in a window well in a basement bedroom, sheetrock, mud tape, paint, ceiling, whatever the other stuff's called, the popcorn ceiling, upgrade the panel box, put in the shower pan, tile the floor, the whole 9 yards, right? Okay, $20 an hour is pretty cool. The pros were going to charge me like $80 an hour, and they had insurance. Well, I already had Hector on work comp GL, so it cost me like another $1 an hour. So it's pretty chill. So, frankly, I didn't have a written scope with him. I just supervised him. Best practice of written scope, but it's not that practical. Best practice would be, hey, get a list of references, call them, look at their portfolio, visit some of their job sites. Realistically, we don't do a lot of that stuff. I do recommend that you do a background check, and if you're going to do bid work, I absolutely recommend you get numerous bids, especially on stuff like tree trimming work and road work, because they're all over the map. I've got this crew of guys that are just great. The first time I hired them, they're from Africa, but they live here in America now, obviously. And they're like pastors and church folk by day, but they don't make that much money. It's more their ministry. So by night and weekend, they trim trees. And they're licensed and insured, but they don't have the equipment. They like literally climb the trees and use ropes and stuff as like pulleys, and they cut down big trees, and they're safe and they do a good job. First time I got 3 bids, I walked the park myself, so I knew I had an apples and apples bid, which is important also, especially on road work because they could really deviate. But here on trees, I got 3 bids. $35,000, $67,000. There's a lot of trees that need to come down at this park and be trimmed up. It was pretty rough and tough. The third bid from my pastoral crew was $7,500 for the exact same scope of work. and they did an excellent job, and they had insurance. So they were actually pros. They just charged Schmo pricing, which was great. So this was like 5 years ago. I still use these guys on a regular basis. And I don't make them bid it out as much now because they're reasonable. Every once in a while I'll bid them, just keep them honest. But that's the key here is, figuring out when you need to use a pro. And then you generally don't need as much documentation, just get the insurance. When you need to use a Schmo, and what's your, threshold of risk here. Having your own work comp GL is important. And really just evaluating how much you want to micromanage them. The benefit of pros is they generally show up and do the job, and it's kind of done. Most of my Schmos, some of them are talented, actually. Some of them, all they can do is like pick up the other end of the mattress. Some of them can barely figure out which end of the shovel goes in the ground. And they don't last that long. Some of them can just paint. Okay, painting, you can teach a monkey to do it with enough bananas, right? It's not that hard. No offense, painters, but it's not that hard. Okay. The skilled work, I have some guys that have pro-level skill or better, but they're Schmos. Why are they Schmos? Because they're unreliable. They don't have a good vehicle. Their girlfriend drops them off, or they walk to work. They don't have their own tools. They're hungover. They got to leave. This minute, even a paycheck, they got to leave for 2 hours to go cash their paycheck and go drive around and go pay all their bills in person. So the reality is, some of these guys have pro-level talent, but they can't show up 5 days in a row on time sober. So they can't. Otherwise, they'd be making $45 an hour in a general contractor crew, but they're making $18 an hour because I look the other way sometimes, which is frustrating as heck, to be honest. But hey, look the other way. You showed up at noon. You have a black eye and you're missing a tooth. I don't even want to know. That's kind of the name of the game with some of these guys. But I think if you're a big company, you're probably using all pros because it's hard to manage your Schmos. If you're a small property, you can't really afford pros, but you also can't really afford a full-time Schmo, so you're probably going to have to do some yourself and get a pro. When you get in the medium size, it could be one park even, but you got to have enough work to keep a guy busy most of the time. So we had a guy named Marty. Marty did a good job for us for 5 or 6 years. And we gave him 40 hours a week. Well, then he went overtime. We gave him 50. We gave him 60. Well, then we ran out of homes remodel. Hey, you used up all the homes too fast. We got another one coming in a month. He's like, oh, okay. Well, he had to go make money. He went and got a job on a roof. Well, 2 days later, we have a toilet clog. Like, hey, Marty, we need you to fix the toilet. And he's like, oh, I'm on a roof for 5 days out of town. I'll get there in 5 days. We're like, oh, crap. Well, then we'd hire a plumber for $150 an hour to fix the job that Marty was doing for 16. So we realized, don't ever let Marty run out of business. And that was a game changer for us. So we limited him to 40 hours a week if we were slow. Quasi-slow. We said, look, you can't do overtime. Go do odds and end jobs overtime. But we can't let you run out of work. We don't have enough homes. Then we realized, okay, keep him busy as many hours he wants to work for us so he's not on somebody else's project on the weekend even. And if we ever got light, we started having to do jobs like personal residence, like my parents have a farm, at the time my grandparents' farm, paint fences, that kind of stuff. There's an infinite work to do on a farm. Everybody knows that. And then there was a couple times even where we didn't have enough work for a moment where we called another park owner who was friendly and we said, look, do you have any homes to renovate? He's like, yeah, I got one that I need. Look, you can have Marty. You got to pay him. Here's what we pay him straight up. Don't pay him more because it's going to piss us off because he might go to you. We're paying him a fair wage. Don't poach him. And you can have him for 2 weeks. But if we have an emergency, we're pulling him off your job, remodel job to get a sewer water line or something. He was deal. It worked out well. Well, then we just figured, let's just go. Let's go faster, go more. And we never ran out of work again. And now we got 20 guys like that we just say, we'll find you work. And we got inside work, we got outside work, stay on the payroll because we don't want them to disappear. So that's important. So you kind of got to get, it doesn't have to be medium like you need 5 or 10 parks. You could do that on one park. Marty was on our first park, right? But then we realized, we brought in 15 homes that were heavy remodels, which was kind of what we did back then, was super heavy. We bought 1980 home, put 18,000 in it, which today seems kind of crazy, but it worked out in the long run. But the key was keeping the guys busy because you hate to lose laborers because, man, it's hard finding work. People that want to work right now. So anyway, pros versus schmos, those are the forms. And your best practices, paper the heck out of it. Realistically, you don't always do that. But if you don't do it, you got to have some form of waiver, some form of insurance. You should always have LLCs in the middle of this stuff as well. Don't cheat on your taxes. That's just asking for trouble. So actually 1099 the guys require, don't pay cash. You know, this stuff is I'm not going to go over that. That's below my pay grade. You should all know that by now. So your call. Do you use the pro? Do you use the pro? Do you use the Schmo? Depending on the decision, you've got a number of things to look at and to work through. Till next time, thanks and God bless.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.